Hello. Up on the what the hell is he doing now bench is a project I started probably a couple of years ago. Didn't get too far on it, but as you can see, it's roughly a 1982 John Deere 317 tractor with a 1949 Ford flathead V8 sitting in there. I did get started on it, but not a lot of work was done. I notched the frame out for one thing. Nothing else has been done to the frame. I'm probably gonna have to obviously frame it or brace it up a little bit more, but notched it out so the motor actually fit in there. Shortened up the drive shaft to the hydrostat transmission and connected to the flywheel. There's a set of motor mounts you can see right here in the back of the motor supporting the back. There's some frame mounts up front in place. They're not actually bolted to the tractor yet, so we need to do that. But our goal in this first round is just to get the motor running. It came out of it was running at one point in time 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So we're gonna make it run again, which include fuel system, carburation, some sort of a get the exhaust manifolds on it, and we'll just take it from there. And eventually we'd like to get it to actually move. There's quite a bit of stuff that needs to occur before that can happen. So let's get started. Okay, a little bit of an update. Distributors in it. Firing order I think is right. Carbs on. Fuel pump's in place. It's been tested. It looks good. The only thing I'm waiting before I can seal this up is there's a little roll pin that holds the drive shaft onto the pump. I need to get that yet. So I think next we're going to put the I don't know, floor pan, fender pan in place, and then get the actual console installed on it, so I can put the ignition switch, starter solenoid, stuff like that on it, and then we should be ready to fire this thing up. So we've got the rear fender back on. I actually mounted the seat to it so I can kind of get a seating position here. So we need to figure out where the console was going to go in this location. So I got it kind of bolted in ish. Made a little framework back there to hold it to the engine as a support. The reason it's bolted up so heavily is there's going to be some funkiness going on with the steering column coming down, and obviously you can see it's pretty tight down there. I'm going to have to swivel it off, have the steering shaft come down, and end up over on this side of the frame rail someplace where I can connect to the steering box, then run back up to our steering arm here. So got it set into place, and I thought, well, let's get the front grill piece in. So I kind of set it in place and mounted the hood up, and I'm glad I did this. So I was able to actually raise the grill mount up just about an inch or two, and I got it to clear most of the distributor and just a small hole for the carb. So I was pretty happy with that. So next we're gonna have to, and after I got this, if you look down the center, the hood's definitely lopsided, but the grill's lopsided, or the dash is a little lopsided too. So we'll have to cut that. I need to raise it up anyways, but at least now with the hood in place, I'll get the hood squared up really nice. Get this final mold bolted in tight, so it's a stable point to measure off of. And then I'll just reframe and add some metal to the actual console, raise it up a little bit, and hopefully, in theory, all I have to do is just add, about 4 or 5 inches to the hood. So I'll, cut it in here someplace where there's the least amount of change in the, it's obviously, it comes back into a kind of a, angles on both sides here. So we'll have to find a point where I can actually cut it and add to it and not have it look kind of weird and oblong shape. So we'll just extend it, get it where it needs to be, the hood lengthwise, and then I'll just raise up the console to meet with it. And that should complete our basic look. But yeah, that's gonna work. Looks goofy enough. Motor cylinders hang outside of it. That's what we're looking for. But the end result is I want it to look as much like a lawn tractor as possible. As far as everything fitting as much inside of it as I can, as much as you could fit a flathead V8 inside of a garden tractor. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but it's actually being hooked directly to the original hydrostat rear end, which means that it's not going to be fast. That was not the goal of this. It'll be still about the same speed, just instead of a 317, it'll be probably a 390. What's a flathead Ford in 49? 90, 100 horsepower. So same speed, more horsepower. Okay, so we've got the console raised up, got about 2 inches out of it, up in the air, and that lined everything up pretty well. Doesn't look too bad. Got a little warpy in the middle here, got a little hot, so I'll do some shrinking and stretching to get that straightened out. But now, let's get the hood extended. Yeah, I know, I cut the hole in the middle of the hood for the carburetor a little too early, but that's okay. Got a fiberglass anyways, let's fiberglass back over. So we're gonna start out with just putting these little braces, as you can see, on the back side of the hood. So it'll be actually fiberglassing front and back side of the hood. We'll start with the front side just to get that done and shaped and get some strength into it. Then we'll flip it over and do the back side. Can also be pieces. I'm gonna put a piece of sheet metal, I think, right in here, or strips of sheet metal or something to create some support. All right, got the backing, got the support in, got the tape in behind there. So we're ready to start glassing. Tapered back the edges a little bit and then brought the rivets below the surface, so we make sure we can cover them up with some filler when it's done. Fiberglass mat's ready. Let's do this. All right, first coat on. Let that cure, and then we'll flip it over and actually do the back side permanently. Heavy layers to thicken it up and strengthen it. And then we'll flip it back over the front side, sand this smooth, and start to put up another coat of fiberglass mat on it, and then finish it. All right, building kind of got a jig to hold the pipes on the engine. Yeah, we're putting zoomies on it. I don't know how tall they're going to be, but at this point in time, but we're going to start with this because what I got 6 of them cut for all 6 of the ports, exhaust ports. So we'll get this tacked on there. Just leveling it. Make sure the tractor was sitting at a, you know, a stance equal on both sides, level on both sides, height-wise. And then just for visual effects, we'll just level them and square them, and we'll tack them in and see how they look. Okay, rinse and repeat 6 more times. Well, 4 more times. All right, there we go. They're tacked into place. I'll take off and final weld them, but alignment's pretty good. Using that little digital level, look pretty good. So I'll just tack them up and final weld them, I should say, and we'll probably do something about the length. Obviously, it's right. The face height's probably bring it up a little bit higher, but we also need to see how loud it's going to be. I mean, it should be pretty loud, but we want somewhat tame, as we want to kind of, you know, parade the thing a little bit once in a while. So, all right, let's get the headers off and our zoomies off and get them fully welded. So the first attempted startup was an absolute shit show. Started out with carburetor issues. I took it apart just to clean it out, and apparently I had put it together incorrectly about 18 years ago. So I fixed that issue, still wouldn't run right. Next moved on to the spark plug wires were, I don't know how old, probably older than me. So I replaced them, new spark plug. It ran a little bit better, but still wasn't running quite right. And I failed to do what I should have done to begin with, which was do a compression test of the entire motor. And it turns out these 2 cylinders had hung open valves, specifically exhaust valves. So took it all apart and got them freed up and back together again. Then it started and actually ran right. So this initial startup isn't the initial startup. It's already been run, and I know it runs. Carburetor's been adjusted, so it doesn't sound too bad. I would have shared the video of the multiple attempted resolution of the problem, but it's nothing but a bunch of curse words and tools being thrown around and anger, so it wasn't that interesting. So here we go. We'll set up the camera and I'll show you the thing running. So next we'll work on the actual steering too. Once we get that secured and mounted tight. Here's the original steering box column. We'll have to actually do some sort of a joint, universal joint system, as it'll have to come down through, head over this way, and then down, and we'll have the steering box down in this area someplace. I mean, you'll have to look at it for sure once I get the fenders off of it, but move on next. Okay, before we talk about the steering box location, we're talking about drilling odd holes in places that don't really support a place for a hole saw and a pilot drill bit and a hole saw. Here's all I do. Literally just, I take a piece of metal, another piece of metal, drill it out, drill a hole in it with a hole saw on the drill press or whatever, and then I just clamp it down into the location where I want the hole. I have 2 vice grips right here, and then slowly work your way through to take that out. It's been done a billion times, but here's an example of a really awkward place to have to try drilling a hole, which is obviously right in the center here, and an easy way of doing it. But as long as you got someplace to clamp it down, which I did right here, just clamp it down and then work it through nice and slow. So what that ended up with is now the steering box. Obviously this came out of the tractor just like this. You can see the knurled end for the steering wheel. But now the plan will be just setting it up inside of here. And bolting it to the frame like this. You'll have the steering arm right there. I'll have to bend a piece of solid bar to connect it up there. And then just a simple swivel, or some sort of a swivel of some sort to get inside to the steering box, or into the console here, through the side here, up, and then I'll have some sort of a carrier bearing or some sort of pillow block bearing here to attach the steering wheel to the actual this. So yeah, because this is now it's a part of the steering block assembly, we're going to have to weld this to this main frame mount for the motor, and then we'll actually make some angle iron that'll actually attach to some bolts on the back of the engine here to really secure this thing in tight. So let's start doing some drilling and making some holes to mount the steering box in, and take it from there. Here's a live version, or a real example of this exact thing here. Hole there, and drill. There you go. It's like that. All right, mock-up complete. Got the steering box bolted into place, and then we built a linkage arm up to the front wheel here. That'll work just fine. I got enough clearance. There's a little bit of a pivot in the front axle here. It'll clear the drag link there. Obviously everything's just tacked together right now and make sure it all fits and works right. I'll probably leave it that way until I get this part done now. So we'll be cutting this down right around here someplace, probably putting a 90 elbow and handing it this way into the chassis, something like this, into the console, and it'll work its way up. There'll be another 90 at the top here with a steering wheel and a bearing carrier, and that should work us just fine. Let's get on to working that part of it out. All right, so we got the steering mechanism in. Not great, but it works, so we'll call that a win. couple of flange bearings there, and just a couple of universal joints. Actually 1/2-inch drive universal joints. Probably should use something else, but that'll work for now. Alright, so it actually does steer now. Not sure how great that's going to be, but we have to final weld up the little tie rod end assembly there, but for the most part we'll call that done. The steering will work, it'll move it. So next on the build will be a battery box back here, the controls to make it go forward and backwards, and some sort of a cooling system. I'm thinking a radiator of a large street bike, possibly. I don't know for sure. We've got dual water pumps, dual inlets and dual outlets on these flathead Fords. As the engines are cooled, the left and right side of the engine are cooled independently. So let's keep that in mind when choosing a radiator. We'll have to add a second in and out on the radiator, so preferably an aluminum one. But that'll end part 1 of a 2-part build. Thanks for watching. See you soon.